So we quickly try and look at this issue that came up. Looks as if it's much ado about nothing really, but here we are. That's the matter that has engaged the attention of the state and also, of course, the media as well. Some guns were brought into the country, you know, and they became suspicious somewhat. And some steps were taken about these guns, and eventually the NDC issued a statement asking the government that this is not good and that it should actually issue a moratorium on importation of weapons. Well, shortly after that, the government held a press conference and announced that it was the NDC that actually, you know, issued the license, so to speak, the permit for these guns to be brought in. Let's listen to the Minister for Information, Kojo Nkrumah, speak about this issue, and James Agalga, the Deputy Minister of the Interior at the time, who issued the permit.
The permit under which these arms were imported was signed by the Honorable James Agalga, Member of Parliament, Deputy Minister for the Interior, on January 5th, 2017. So this permit we are talking about, which allowed these persons to import this cache of arms legally into the country, was issued on the 5th of January 2017 under the signature of the Honorable James Agalga. I have a copy of it here. I'll give a copy to you afterwards. And we find it strange that the very persons who issued the permit for the importation of these arms will today turn around and say that the Akufo-Addo administration has issued permits and therefore you know, has to take the security situation of this country a lot more seriously than it is doing now. Where all of these points of alarm that they raise in this statement, all of these points of alarm that they raise, were they not known to them at the time that they were signing this permit? At the time that they were issuing this permit, all of these points of alarm, were they not known to them? And was the security of the state, which they are talking about today, non-existent at the time when they were issuing this permit? You can't appropriate and reprobate. You can't do this. And then when a new administration rather comes in and is the one that takes the necessary efforts to secure the consignment and ensure that it's kept in a place and not necessarily in the hands of persons with doubtful character, then you turn around issuing statements as though something untoward has happened. So the first point we want to make is that indeed the permit that was issued by the NDSC administration.
Evans, I wouldn't remember, but I have always maintained that the company in question is known to the Ministry of the Interior. And so if it turns out that the permit that was issued under my signature, I wouldn't have any thing to say about that.
You mean you will not deny it?
Clearly, I haven't seen the permit. If I see it and the signature is indeed mine, I will admit. But as I speak now, I have not seen the document the Honorable Minister for Information, Kojo Nkrumah, has in his custody and possession. If I see and indeed that signature turns to mine, yes, I can see confirmations. But as I talk to you, I haven't seen the document in question. Say that the company in question, Yako, has at all material times when we're in office known to the Ministry of the Interior as a licensed arms dealer. The Ministry of the Interior is a state entity as distinct from the NDC as a political party. So let us draw the distinction here. It's very important.
The fundamental question remains, did your government, yourself, sign off on this particular consignment of arms that we just witnessed last week that was seized?
Fairness, I have told you that I haven't seen the permit that is in the possession of Honorable Kojo Nkrumah.
You haven't seen it?
So documents that came under my signature were simply too voluminous.
Okay, no.
For me to, on the spur of the moment, know which permit came under my signature or not can only be confirmed when I have seen the document that is in his possession.
Right. So let's begin with Kofi Adams. Okay, so when the NDC issues a statement, it will mean that you have thoroughly examined a particular situation, and as a corporate entity, you have come to a clear understanding and you are taking a position. At the time you were issuing the statement, is it the case that you were unaware that it was the NDC government that issued the permit on the 5th of January 2017 for these arms to be brought into the country? And we're talking about 20,000 cases of 500 pieces of shotguns, shotgun cartridges, 4,000 pieces of hunting shotguns, and 500 boxes of percussion caps. What happened?
Thank you, Samson, and good morning to your viewers and listeners. And I must say the NDC was very clear in his mind when the statement was issued and signed by our Director of Communication. We knew what we were about, and we knew what it is that we were communicating, especially to government, that we know the situation in which we find ourselves, that in recent times, from 2018, thereabout, so many incidents have happened in this country and around us that has to do with use of arms and ammunitions. There have been many other conflicts even within the country and without the country. There have been all kinds of killings and murders that you cannot explain. And many of these have happened with some of these ammunitions. The statement we put out was not to challenge the legality of the importation. No. The statement was clearly to call on government that has a responsibility to protect all of us at this moment. Bear in mind that at every time you will have only one government, and government must take decisions that will protect the good people of this country. So we were always seeking to advise that if government has not advertised his mind on the relationship between the happenings in the country, the kidnappings, the threats of terrorism, and so on and so forth, to availability of some of these arms, then government should wake itself to it and advertise its mind and make sure that these arms that first have come into the country don't find their way into wrong hands. And if possible, no more importation. A moratorium of a sort be placed on importation, and possible checks and investigations as to why a process that have started with a particular type of arms to be imported end up changing and adding some other ones if we are referring to the same authorization. But Samson, from our reading, importation of arms and ammunition go through a process. The Ministry of Interior never issues permit. They don't issue permit. So what the 5th January 2017 letter did was an authorization, kind of indicating to the unit or department responsible for issuance of permit that you could go ahead. If the CID in its right mind feels that subsequent information available to them post the initial checks that led to the Interior Ministry issuing the authorization inside that the arms shouldn't come, they have every right to refuse to issue permit.
This is what the letter of 5th January 2017 said. It's addressed to the Director General, CID, Ghana Police Service Headquarters, titled Application for Permission to Import Safety Cartridges. And a part of it says, paragraph 2, permission is hereby granted. And this letter is the one signed by the Honorable James Agalga, Deputy Minister. Permission is hereby granted to MS Yadco to import the underlisted explosives and accessories for the use of their clients who are all engaged in mining and quarry sectors.
Clearly, it says permission is granted. It doesn't mean permit for importation has been granted. It means that per the law, you needed, the CID cannot directly issue a permit even if they are satisfied. They need the ministry, which is the unit that is overseeing the CID, the general policing, and all those security agencies. They needed their authorization. So what that letter sought to suggest is that, as far as we are concerned, based on the initial information and the checks you have provided us on that particular person, permission is granted. What it means, therefore, is that the CID now can now move to the next stage of checks. And clearly, from 5th January, by the next day, that government was no more in place. By midnight of 6th January, it was no more in place. So the issuance of the final permit for importation, which happened way back or later in 2018, January 2018, would have happened when clearly another administration was fully in charge and in place. And you see, you get worried where you have an administration that was particularly even interested in cancelling or stopping many contracts and other arrangements for purposes of investigation, such as even road constructions that will make even life better for all of us, has been stopped for purposes of what? So-called investigations. If you listen to the Minister for Roads when His Excellency the President visited Jasikam, for example, the road construction that they were doing from Hohwe to Jasikam was stopped by this administration to look into perceived corruption or what have you.
You're saying that your government issued a permit, so to speak, because this one says permission is hereby granted.
Which is the other.
Correct.
Yeah.
It is correct also that the same letter is requesting the CID to issue the company with the import permit.
Exactly.
Import permit.
Exactly.
So you did this, and now you turn around and you raise an alarm. What is the purpose of the alarm?
The alarm that is being raised based on happenings around you. It's like saying that you have signed, let me reduce it to a certain level, you have signed authorization for a playground to be established. The processes for establishing a playground possibly began. Then you realize that all of a sudden, some accidents in relation to such playgrounds are happening. Another person is in charge of the processes now. You have every right to draw the person's attention that based on all these happenings, we will advise you to place some moratorium on such activities.
Thank you.
So the NDC was rightly placed in giving
do you find that, but for the government making public what actually transpired and the fact, disclosing the fact of the NDC being the government under whose watch the permission was granted, they would have been playing and seeking to deceive Ghanaians?
But Samson, if you had allowed me to
because
finish,
the impression was created as though this thing was this government doing everything.
If you had allowed me to just finish before Kweku comes, just less than a minute, clearly I'll be done. So where we got worried was, if you read the NDC statement, like I said earlier, it is not even about the legality, it's more of an advice that we do regularly. Then you have the Minister for Information. Now comes out, who knew too well that after the authorization from the Interior Ministry, now comes the permit to import, which is issued by the CID, and subsequent one signed by the Chief Director of Ministry of Interior in January 2018. The Information Minister clearly hid this information and these documents from the public, making it sound and look as if the importation, the clearing, everything about these ammunitions, the changing from hunting guns to pump action was as a result of the
like
5th
you're
January
accusing
2017
of
letter.
hiding these documents. So in the same way, you'd also be accused of hiding the fact
No,
of
we
the
didn't.
originating process.
We-
Yes, Kweku.
We didn't hit anything.
Kweku, let's hear you.
We didn't complain about the legality.
Were they up to some deceptive game? And why the alarm in the first place? Is it justified?
It was needless. And even if it was needed, they did it in a very diabolical way, driven by mischief. And he knows that. It's just that it backfired. It's as simple as that. You see, I'm now feeling very sorry, and I pray that nothing is done to complicate the business of this company called, is it Yadco Ghana Limited, which apparently is licensed to do this business, and which went through due process to get the, what do you call it, the permit. And indeed, all the processes that were going on at the port were in accordance with due process. It wasn't intercepted as people put it. It came through the regular channel. The SEPs and the rest were doing the regular thing. I have documentation here to show that they adhered to all the requirements of the law by bringing in the BNI, national security, police, tracking what was in there, finished with it, put it in the vehicles. The vehicles were escorted to the warehouse, which is licensed to store those things, and they are still policing. Strictly speaking, nothing had gone amiss, but for the politicians' intervention and the alarm bells that they rang unnecessarily and needlessly. He might have put this company right on the banner, front banner, when it is needless. It affects sometimes their business, their integrity. Okay, it's unfair, and it's the NDC that should take the blame for that. Honestly, this is not the first time they're doing things like that. They've been doing it for consistently.
I'm surprised about this.
Please allow him to speak.
See,
sorry. Yeah, he's not shifting anything. Let's hear him.
You see, there's something I've noticed. The letter that the minister put out. This letter, the 2nd January 2018, that my brother is referring to so forcefully. What does the last but one paragraph says? It says, it is noted that you were granted permit by the Honorable Minister for Interior to import 4,000 hunting shotguns per letter number so and so and so, dated 5th January 2017. I have no problems with the timing. I know people who've debated that issue here, this last minute appointments, last minute what. We've debated it, and I made my position clear. Until 7th January, when the president of the administration exits, they have authority. And I can show you examples. Under the Kufuor administration, after Kufuor restored Kofi Boakye on the 6th of January 2009, okay? Also did some serious, got Attorney General to finally prosecute on Kunedu's case, all around that time. Akuto say was signing warrants for payment to the KPPT, the Pont Temna plant, 6th January 2009. There are others who have problems with it. I don't have, and I've been consistent on that. So I'm not bothered about the 5th January being 2 days to handing over. Okay?
What you're saying here also is that the 2nd January 2018 letter is only a matter of course.
Yes.
Because the 5th January 2017 letter had already given.
That is why the director, the chief director of the ministry referenced it.
Right.
So it is the same transaction. Indeed, this letter, James' letter, there's a little defect in the sense that it doesn't give you the specific duration. But if you read other correspondence from the police, which I have here, they are saying it's relative to one transaction. And the importer may have had problems here and there, but some of the guns came in first, about 400 and something. And there was a balance of, a remaining balance of 1,500, which was supposed to come subsequently. But it is one transaction, in spite of the fact that there's not a specific timeline given by the minister. But you see, this is the application by, there's a little funny thing here, which I would not put too much premium on. This letter is dated, application by Yadco is dated 8th July 2016. That's what the date is on.
Last minute work.
Well, 8th July 2016.
I mean, the way the public officers act.
Yes.
They never act until last minute.
But the interesting thing,
But it goes through
and
process.
the minister, deputy minister signed here, approved for your urgent action, this, all that. But I found one thing interesting. The secretary, and he says, please act on an action needed. You see the date is 8th December 2016. Now take a critical look at it. You will see that it was 8th July 2016. There's been an attempt. Just take a look at it.
Yeah.
Somebody has used a black ink to change the 7 to 12.
It appears altered.
Take a look at it.
Let the
I'm not
camera
accusing anybody. I'm telling you what something fishy about even the, and there's a note, there's no receipt.
Right.
Stamp of receipt.
Okay.
That's also significant.
Right.
But in spite of all that,
This is a photocopying material that you are
Yeah.
using.
So for those of you watching,
the changes
this
happen
figure,
when you got
this
it.
date,
don't waste your
this
time.
date is what Kwekwe is referring to. You see 8th, and then you see 1, 2. You can see the 2 is deepened.
No, but
It looks like there was a number
out the
there
7.
that has been.
Samson, this is a photocopy.
Why are you worried?
material.
You were not responsible for that.
right.
No,
Just
I know that you
relax.
are not
So
responsible.
it is a suspicion.
It's a suspicion.
Suspected alteration.
And as I've said here, a multitude of suspicions do not constitute evidence of guilt. I haven't
Right.
said anything.
Right.
All I'm saying is I found it very funny. There was no stamp of receipt also at the ministry.
Okay.
And that was funny. Otherwise, if you go through all the documentation, the importer brought in what it says he was bringing. The appropriate agencies went to the port. They knew it was what was in it. They examined it to make sure it coincided, it reflected what the application said they were bringing in. The police escorts, BNI escorts, followed them to the warehouse. The things are now in the warehouse.
Right.
Then DC was saying that, look, put a moratorium on importation because of the security environment. At the time they were signing this thing, those essential elements of the security environment were still around here.
They say you are wrong when you say that.
Oh,
You'll be completely.
give me
wrong.
kidnapping.
You'll be
They
completely
mentioned
wrong.
kidnapping.
No, he wants to show to you the police
See,
statistics.
They picked kidnapping. Okay, see,
Why?
this is police
You
official.
let him read
That's
it.
why he's going to show us.
He
2014.
showed this last week.
2014, we had
doesn't
76
need to show it
kidnappings
again.
in this country. The media perhaps didn't make too much noise on it or report on it. So we thought with kidnappings were not in existence in this country. 2014, we had 76. 2015, we had 43 rather. 2016, we had 52. 2017, 51.
Okay.
Kidnappings were here. If you want to go to the armed robbery incidents, the police statistics too are available. From 2007 to 2013, from 2014 to 2017, same massive numbers.
You see,
Okay.
The thing happening now is that the media and civil society have become more aware and more proactive, and it's good for this country.
Thank you.
But
Thank you very much.
we should
Kofi-
not create the impression
Kofi, sorry.
that
Don't
those
make that
things didn't
intervention.
exist. Indeed, James himself, his letters on Gitmo 2, when the Americans requested to bring them in here, and the American embassy wrote to our foreign ministry, and the foreign ministry forwarded the American request to the Ministry of Interior. I have the letters here. James wrote on behalf of his minister or the ministry, and he indicated that in view of the security environment in the West Coast, Boko Haram in Nigeria and Burkina and Cote d'Ivoire, we were not prepared to accept this Gitmo 2 because of security environment.
He was ignored. Thank
It
you.
was ignored.
Samson,
Thank
I
you.
hope
Thank
I'll
you.
get-
Sorry.
I'll
Sorry.
get a minute
Sorry.
for-
And so, Clara, I see. I mean, typical. That's what you're trained to do. So, once you hear something, you are looking for the law. I've seen you are reading, and you and Avuchi have been sharing the law on this. So, the law allows even private citizens, individuals, to own guns and to use same, except that they will have to procure it through the right process and also register it for a certain period under certain conditions. If you want to import ammunition and arms, the law also provides for it, except that if you break that rule or the law and the conditions that are giving you, you may suffer a maximum of about 12,000 Ghana cedis fined by a court, or you may get 5 years in jail, or you may get, say, 12 months in jail. So why is this a big deal?
Okay. Actually, I will talk on this as a Ghanaian. Now, that's actually the question I've been asking. The reason being that the two press conferences by the Minister for Information as well as the opposition NDC suggest that something wrong has been done. The reason I say it suggests something wrong has been done is, if nothing wrong has been done, why are we looking for who to blame? Mm-hmm. We only look for someone to blame when a wrong has been done. So it's the government and the main opposition party telling us that some wrong has been done, and then we are looking for who has caused the wrong. I think when the arms came in and people saw them and put videos out there were rumors and claims that the NPP has brought it in to be giving to its people and so on. So that's where I'm coming to. There's a difference between leadership and politics. And I think there are times that we need to separate the rules. We need when we have to rise up to the obligation of leadership and when we have to do politics. I think this called for rising up to the leadership bit before you descend into the politics bit. And why do I say rising up to the leadership? If there are rumors all over the place, first of all, establish whether or not something wrong has been done. If you have established that something wrong has been done, then tell us, as the people in charge of our security, what you are doing to correct the wrong. I don't think that there's no reason for panic, or there's no reason to put fear there. Because one, of course, like you said earlier on, the legal regime requires that if you want to import arms into the country, you import the arms. Once the arms are imported, it's not a free flow. It's not as if everything, then you can do whatever you like with it. After the arms have been imported, there is a legal regime governing what happens to those arms. So what I expect as a Ghanaian is that, one, you will tell me whether or not some wrong has been done. And if we are afraid that some wrong has been done and we are afraid that our security is at stake, what I expect you to do is to tell me that I have taken A, B, C, D steps to ensure that your security is safe. For example, once the guns get in, housing of the guns, there's a regime in place. Who has possession of the guns? Right. The guns, there is a regime in place. So you should be telling me that we have adequate protection in the legal regime, and we are going to ensure that the legal regime is followed. For example, you register the arms. The person who registers the arm, the legal regime allows the IGP or the police to even request that when to account for ammunition.
Exactly.
So that at least if we are afraid, the reason why we regulate it is that we don't
have a central register.
Exactly. Mm. And then, and when you are going to transfer that gun, dispose of that gun or that ammunition, or transfer it to another person, you need to update. I mean, you still need approval, authorization.
You first hand it to the police before it goes to the next hand.
Exactly. So there is a regime, if we are so minded, to track arms, so that when we have, what we need to do is, one, to determine whether or not something is wrong has been done, bringing in the arms, and to assure everybody that after the arms have been brought, if nothing wrong has been done, of course, if something wrong has been done, you stop it at that level. But if nothing wrong has been done under the legal regime, and assure all of us that we are taking A, B, C, D steps that the legal regime has provided for to ensure that the guns do not get into wrongful hands. So we can assure you that we cannot sleep on our authority. I think the Ghanaian people deserve to know that. So I think after we have done that leadership bit, which now requires that you have assured all of us, the politicians can do their politics. I can't begrudge them for that. But as a citizen, I think we have to realize politicians do have to come up to the realization that they do owe us a lot more. They do owe us a lot more, and they have to carry out that responsibility.
I hear you say it was needless to put out that, in fact, the license or the authorization was issued by NDC and so on and so forth. That was unnecessary.
Whether or not that was necessary, it's to begin with, that is not where to have started from. You should have first of all started from telling us whether something wrong has been done.
Okay.
If after you have told us something wrong has been done and you want to respond to what the NDC has said, you can respond. But in responding to it, make the facts accurate. So provide the facts that this was when it was, because we all know, or the legal regime knows, that when you give a permit, it's not in perpetuity. Permits have a duration.
Right.
So put the facts there out as they are. We are not entitled. I think we bring low our politics when even on facts we think we should be entitled to our own set of facts. Facts are facts.
Right.
We are entitled to our opinions on the facts. So if after you had done what I said we should do, I don't have a problem saying that pointing out that it was the NDC regime that first gave the permit, because they are entitled to respond to the press conference that sought to suggest that this was that. But in doing so, also follow the facts so that we do not have to watch a banter on a very important issue.
But it was the NDC
Okay.
that began it all.
Sorry, hold on. Please hold on. Please hold on.
I'm sorry.
Please, let me moderate. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Kofi. Now, Mr. Bauchi here. The letter that gave the authorization from the 5th of January 2017, obviously, from what we know, did not do anything wrong. But when it says that this company has clients who are all engaged in mining and the quarry sectors, I am seeking to understand whether the permit and authorization is being given because when you are in the mining and quarry sector, you are supposed to be having guns or what? Because as you look at the law, individual citizens or persons within the jurisdiction are entitled to own guns if they so wish, except that it is not as of right. They must go through the process and be allowed. Some of the guns definitely will be imported by a class of the guns, according to the law, will be imported by those who have the power to import and distribute. There's another category of the guns that if you want as an individual, you have to import it directly by yourself. I didn't know all of these things a few years ago. After I got into one or two, difficulties dealing with some situations, I needed a gun and I had to go through the process. And if you need a particular one, you were giving the authorizations by yourself to go and import and bring it into the country to start with. So if there are outlets that can import the guns and give it out for people to register for within 6 months and renew and so on and so forth, and if the law allows people to also take authorization, go out of the country, bring the guns in, why do you think they would nominate in this letter and say, because the entity has clients who are all engaged in mining and quarry?
Well, your question raises the fundamental question of what are the protocols for granting these permits. But in order to answer that, again, we need to consider the fact that when permits are issued, these permits are issued on the basis of discretionary powers that are exercised by the person or the minister who is exercising those powers. So the fundamental issue to consider is what are the pragmatic considerations? If we're issuing it out to someone or people who are engaged in mining, are they going to use it in their individual capacities, or are they going to use it as an organized entity? If it is an organized entity, then you are presenting yourself with a police challenge. You may create a mini militia or a mini army, whatever trade or whatever activity they may be undertaking. You may be creating an organized force that may challenge the regular police service. Now, first of all, we shouldn't forget that this is a country where our police service themselves are not very well resourced. I see the police people holding guns sometimes. You can tell that the gun, some of them may not shoot. If I'm not saying the police officer should try, experiment with anyone, especially when they see me around. But some of the guns clearly you can tell that they're not modern and they're a bit outdated. But the point is this: if you have entities that may be wielding modern weapons, newer weapons, contemporary weapons, and they are organized, they may present a police challenge in the event. that any activity, in the event that there's any problem anywhere, and the police have to confront these people, and these organized entity, as it were, are more armed or better armed than the police are concerned. So I think the question to ask also is, what are the pragmatic considerations that went into allowing the importation of these numbers? And it appears to be quite a sizable number.
Right.
And apparently we still have more coming. It appears to be a sizable number. If that is going to an organized entity, then it presents not only a police challenge, but a national security challenge. And so the discretionary power that may have been exercised there may itself involve or require some vetting and some checks, some auditing to check the extent to which this was properly exercised.
4,000 guns.
So
20,000 cases of 500 pieces of shotgun cartridges.
So while we still do the political ping pong between the NDC and the NPP, this is one instance, as I think Clara mentioned, where you will expect a certain level of rising above the political thing and to speak of national security. This is national security. Whether it's the NDC in power or the NPP in power, it is national security. And so I would not want to go into the legality of the letter and whether or not a particular signature has changed, among others. I'm not going to go into
You see, it attracted my curiosity because of the situation we have found with the Galamsey issue and how guns are so easy to find within the Galamsey situation. If you look at the Chinese who have been involved that we have accused, how you find them, they always arrested with guns, a lot of them.
One would only hope that, again, the protocols that are in place are stringent and the stringent protocols are complied with.
All right.
The question is, for example, if someone is importing this, I'm sure they may have, or I do hope, that they may have gone through or gone through the processes of national security clearances. I'm informed that the BNI was involved, the national security entities were involved, and so hopefully they have gone through the clearances. But more fundamentally, if the guns are going to be borne by an organized entity, that still presents for me a problem.
It does,
because the Constitution and indeed the plethora of our laws actually contemplate a situation in which no entity will be allowed to challenge the police entity of Ghana. So once you give arms to organized entities that are structured, that are organized, that are going to bear it under a certain command, then you create a police national security difficulty. Because in the event of a clash between that entity and the police, our police may be outmanned, maybe outgunned, so to speak. And I think that's some of the difficulties that I have. It's very difficult to engage in this conversation because we don't have the full the spectrum of facts that we need. We don't know whether all these things I'm asking, I think that at the moment they are just guesswork. We don't know whether indeed the minister went through them. And we don't know whether indeed our national security entities in certifying these bodies have actually made considerations of these. Because I have a difficulty with all these arms going into the hands of an organized entity. It presents a national security police powers challenge, which we have to deal with.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm giving you 30 seconds, Kweku, 30 seconds, and then we take a break and we come back to deal with the Tardy girls and whether or not we are on a mission that is impossible. Yes.
On the issue of the organized groups, usually what happens is that if you have an institution that have a security, they want to arrange side stands for their security, but each security person is personally licensed to a weapon. So you have a security person who will be trained and be licensed. You cannot transfer that particular weapon to another person. So it is to you. Even if it is used somewhere, they will trace it to you. So
you can transfer by going through the legal process.
By going through the legal process. Okay. So if a quarry site decides to give 4 maybe pump actions to their security, if at any time they change, the new person taking over that responsibility must go through the process to be able to use that way.
Why do people in the quarry and the mining industry require guns?
See, sometimes because of where they work.
But they have been using the police and the army to protect them as well.
Because of where they work, you encounter all kinds of other dangerous situations. It could be not just even human attack. You could encounter some other dangerous animals and what have you, because of where they are. So they need such things to support. But this one was to help. It's not a rebuttal to what Kweku did. But you see, Kweku was dangerously trying to suggest that it is the NDC that has caused all these hula baloo. When in actual sense, the initial videos and comments that came out was trying to suggest that the people didn't know which party was actually responsible for such an importation. All we sought to do was to ask that government should show leadership.
Okay, thank you.
Government should show leadership.
Thank you very much.
Quickly. One thing is missing. The CID permit.
Sorry.
When was it issued?
Sorry, it's okay. We've read all that.
No, you didn't read that.
We have given the dates.
No, you didn't give the date when it was issued. You only talked about the Ministry of Interior Chief Director. The CID was supposed to issue the permit.
Okay,
when was that
okay.
permit
We don't have that. Do you have that? You don't have the date to that. Yes, Kweku.
See, all the letters, those from the ministry, I've noticed one common feature, and it says this: this permit does not require any authorization from the ECOWAS to make this import of shotgun, so and so.
Yeah.
I've tried to ask some few questions, and I'm told that it depends on the type of gun. Those guns like AK-47
that one
require
requires
ECOWAS authorization. Now we need to also ask ourselves specific question. This thing, the application, you know,
yes.
When they say shotgun cartridges, what does that mean? I'm not an expert there. What is it exactly? You know, we should find out. When they say tins of percussion cap, what is that? I don't know what it is.
Ammunition.
Shotgun cartridge.
The cartridge is ammunition.
In bullet.
Yeah.
Bullet.
Yes, so, but that then when it comes to quarry, sometimes they use explosives.
Yes.
We know that.
They also use explosives.
Yes, so it depends on what kind of items we are talking about here. In any case, my view is that they go through, and I'll read this letter, which is 7th May 2019.
Okay, so let's do that quick.
It's signed by Madame Ya Tiwa Adodankwa, Mrs.
What's the date again?
7th May 2019.
All right.
And just to look at the procedures that are followed, and I think that's what they went through. It says arms and ammunition clerks at point of collection en route to their final destination should ensure that the delivery of their products from Tema Harbour and their subsequent lodgement into the recipient company's magazine in Accra are entered into the relevant arms and ammunition books and forms. The items must be sent to their destination under adequate police escort, and the representatives of the BNI informed immediately on arrival at the destination. Crime officer, that is Tama region, should ensure that an inventory is taken of the shotgun cartridges delivered from the harbour, indicating serial / batch / lot numbers, and a copy given to the police escort. Also, a copy of the inventory should be given to the BNI officer and another forwarded to this headquarters for our records. Crime officer / Accra region should make sure that the serial / batch / lot numbers of the items received and lodged in tally with the information on the inventory delivered to him by the police escort. He should acknowledge receipt of the items deposited therein and forward a copy of the said inventory to this headquarters for verification. The Minister for Interior's permit covers the above mentioned shotgun cartridges and is valid for one transaction only.
Right.
So at least there are certain procedures which they went through. We can ask questions about the quantity and also maybe mining an area and ask further questions. That's fine. But I'm saying that the alarm raised by our friends in the NDC unnecessarily
it was very
attracted, bad news.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It was necessary for the country's security.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you know
all
the
right.
company?
So
I said that it was necessary for the country's security.
As it were, the government has announced that there is an audit, ongoing audit of all these sort of permits that were issued and arms that have come in, so that it will help to better police the system.
See, something. There is also a specific point that this thing has a duration.
Exactly, the duration.
All the letters I've seen issued by this administration, it's specific. They tell you. Incidentally, James's one is silent.
Okay. All right. So that would be about
it. Not have been relying on that.
That would be about it. That would be about it.
They know the time regime.
Let the government.
I'm saying that they know the time regime.
Sorry.
Letter was just an authorization.
Let the government do the audit, and I'm sure when they are done, because this issue has become so serious, they would get back to the public and let us know if we are safe as far as our security system, our guns and ammunition system is concerned. At each police station, they are authorized to register your arms for you if you want to own one, and they are supposed to bring the information to Accra for the central registry. How good is that system also? Are people renewing them when it is time to renew? Are people gifting them without going through the processes? Are people handing the guns to other people without going through the processes? And is the police equipped to ensure that all these things are intact? Clara wants to give us a word in 30 seconds, then we move on.
No, it's been said, but it bears repeating because of how important it is. The issue is in the public domain. The current circumstances, we know that issues of national security, it's a concern. There are concerns of national security. So I think what we really, the institutions of state, the leadership of state, do actually owe us to at least give us that, assure us that we are doing A, B, C, D, the legal regime, we are following everything, and then keep the public updated on what happens so everybody feels safe, that there's nothing wrong.
Okay. We'll be right back to ask questions whether or not the mission to rescue the Tardy girls is one that is impossible. And should the CID boss hang her boots for giving hope to the parents? We'll be right back.